And we're joined now by two lawmakers just back from that White House meeting. Congresswoman Nita Lowey, a Democrat from New York, who chairs the Foreign Operations Subcommittee of the House Appropriations Committee, and Congresswoman Ileana Ross-Lehtinen from Florida, who is the senior Republican on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congresswoman Ross-Lehtinen, since I fumbled your name, I'll start with you.
I do it every day, so don't worry about it.
Great. What did you think of what the President had to say to you at the White House this afternoon?
I support the President's mission. I support the surge of troops in Afghanistan. I like the way that he framed the issue as not only Afghanistan as a sole unit, but coupled with Pakistan, because I think that you've got to look at that as a theater of operations. What I did not agree with him on is already having a drawdown date of July of 2011. I think that sends the wrong signal, and I asked him about that. I asked him why we're not using words like victory and benchmarks for success, and he says he'll be elaborating on that in his speech tonight. But overall, I think it was a thoughtful decision. He came at it by hearing all points of views, and I think it's the right time to get those additional troops and to let the Afghan people know, and the military and Karzai, that he's got to root out corruption and he's got to beef up his troops. It's not an open-ended check, and it's not an open-ended commitment.
I want to go through those parts bit by bit, but Congresswoman Lowey, I want to ask you first what you thought about this 30,000 troop number.
Well, first of all, the President was very persuasive, and I hope Ileana's comments will lead, for the most part, to bipartisan support for the President. Let's face it, he didn't choose this war. We've been there for 8 years. We've spent over $1 trillion. And I think it was very, very important that he emphasized the concern he had for sending young men and women abroad, but he also made it clear that this is a national security issue. We cannot have a vacuum in Afghanistan, especially with Pakistan next door with nuclear weapons. So there are questions that he discussed, and I know there will be a continuing discussion about corruption in the government. How do you work with Karzai and the ministers to really make a change? And Ileana talked about the date. I think that's very important. President Karzai and the Afghan people have to understand that we're not there indefinitely. We're there to train the troops, to train the security forces, to transition to a government that is moving in the right direction. I've worked with the National Solidarity Program, doing amazing things in villages throughout Afghanistan. I've worked with the Global Development Program, hiring 10,000 Afghans to work in agriculture. But there are tremendous obstacles, like the corruption that we both mentioned, have to be overcome, and I'm hoping we can have bipartisan support for the President's plan.
What do you think about that, Congresswoman Ross-Lehtinen? Did you detect in that room today that there is bipartisan support building for this? I noticed a lot of positive comments today from Republicans, except for that timetable benchmark question you raised.
Absolutely, and we had a lot of the Democratic leadership and the Republican leadership, the chairman of the lead committees, as well as the ranking committee members, and all of us come from different areas, and we have different concerns. But I think that we understand that being successful as we beat down Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and other extremists that are going to take over swaths of land is perilous to our national security. So we must be successful. I worry, and I don't want to keep drilling down on this date, but I do worry about that time certain when we start to be drawing down troops, because I think that it sends a signal to the very people that we want to defeat, that they can just wait us out. And I know that this is a hard sell for the American people. Maybe this is the trade-off that the President needed to make as we do the surge, to make the commitment that we are going to draw down. We're drawing down in Iraq, and we've been successful there with a limited mission. And but I worry about that kind of signal and whether we're telegraphing an exit strategy too soon before we see those benchmarks for success being met by the Afghan security forces themselves.
Ms. Lowy, we have heard from members of your party, Jim McGovern earlier in the piece, Barbara Lee, others who have said we should just turn and leave Afghanistan right now, and that any more money spent on this war is money poorly spent. What do you say to your colleagues?
I think it's very important that the President give a powerful, persuasive speech this evening. And then I know he will come up to the Capitol to talk to my colleagues. My colleagues are honest, good people who have real questions. I have questions about the cooperation of our allies. How many troops are they going to send? This is a national security issue, not just for the United States of America, but for the whole world. If there is a vacuum in Afghanistan, and we have Pakistan next door with Al-Qaeda, Mullah Omar, this is a threat to all of us.
Do 5,000 NATO troops sound like enough to you?
No, I'm hoping it would be more, because again, it has to be a cooperative effort. We can't just do this alone. But let's face it, the United States is the leader, and we have to lead, and we have to work with Karzai, we have to work with what we have, and we have to identify, as the President said, those ministers that have worked on the NSP program, the Global Development Program. We're bringing agricultural experts in there. Now, I'm not blind to all the challenges. The President was dealt this hand, and he's trying to make the best of a hand. Remember, again, I said at the beginning, we've been there 8 years, spending $1 trillion, and things are getting worse. So he has consulted with every group I can think of, trying to come up with the best proposal, and he's going to have to sell it to Democrats and Republicans.
I disagree with my colleague when she says that he was dealt this hand. Actually, President Obama has been very clear by saying that Afghanistan is a war of necessity. He does not say that he was dealt this hand. He's always said, and even during his campaign, that's where we should have been. And so I don't think that he can blame his predecessor and say he was dealt that hand.
Let me attempt to move on, because there are a lot more. Well, let me just move on to this one next point, because I asked you, Ms. Lowy, about what your Democratic colleagues have said. I now want to ask Ms. Slayton in the